buying a business that is already cash flowing is a significantly better way of jumping into entrepreneurship than any other method.
He said, well, about 20 years ago, I heard about this company, Indicator, that was for sale for $8 million. And I had $8,000, and I got an investor. We went and bought the company, and holy smokes, I have $8,000, or I could find $8,000.
Buying a business is not a simple thing. It's not without stress, and you can mess it up many times over. You can also succeed very quickly if you do it correctly.
But the stress of getting the deal done versus organically building something step by step, I take the stress over expansion through acquisition any day.
What's really unbelievable is right now, 1 out of every 5 small businesses are retiring.
Clevelanders know I'm a boomerang kid. I never planned to come back. I never wanted to come back, and then I come back after my dreams hit. Like, there's a lot of money in Cleveland.
And this thing that we got going on here is amazing.
And I didn't know we had that many billionaires in Cleveland, but
You're literally 50 to 60 times more likely to be successful as a business owner, becoming a business owner, buying a company than starting a company.
So what we're going to talk about today is entrepreneurship through acquisition, which we colloquially call ETA. So we'll say a lot of acronyms, and we all know what we're talking about, and we probably don't, so I apologize. And if you don't, raise your hand or shout out, and we'll try to solve that problem. So the people up on this stage have been doing what we call entrepreneurship through acquisition for a number of years. Some of us, what do you think, Kiley? What do we say, 15 years, 20 years? What do you think, Scott, 20? Let's call it 20 years. And many more if you multiply all of us together. What we hold similarly in our belief systems is that buying a business that is already cash flowing is a significantly better way of jumping into entrepreneurship than any other method. So many people, including myself, have spent time in their lives believing that if I only have a good idea, I can make it work and I can be an entrepreneur, I'm going to go do that. The problem is that when you start with an idea and you have no cash and you're trying to raise money and you're trying to do work without paying yourself and without feeding yourself, it's virtually impossible. So we have this belief, and we all came about it from different ways, that when you buy a properly cash flowing business and you structure it correctly, it is the fastest and most effective way to get into entrepreneurship. And I encourage anyone that has the ability to do it to do just that. So the first thing that I would like to do with the panel here is ask a similar question to everyone. And we're going to start with Kiley. I'd like to know, Kiley, what entrepreneurship through acquisition really means to you as a definition, and what opportunities that you see for people broadly in the marketplace.
Thankful to have a microphone. Well, first of all, thank you for everybody being here, Thomas, Michael, and the panel. I think my sisters would say that's such a canned statement. I really want to say what I wanted to wear tonight was a Christmas hat and a Go Vote, so you can visualize that on me. So what I think about ETA is Scott and I actually were in school at the MBA program at the very same time. We didn't know each other. We were probably in the same class. But we had this spectacular professor called Osborne. I'm kind of stealing his thunder right now. He was the most phenomenal, uber successful entrepreneur. And it motivated us to see why being an entrepreneur and buying business was a good thing. In my life, I sat at the dinner table where probably 80% of my families had companies and we bought companies. So where did I go? I did not buy a company. I'm sitting as an entrepreneurial thinker, which is possible too. But this thing that we got going on here is amazing, and the fact that we're sitting here at a cool venue that Thomas actually invited us to, talking about it, is phenomenal. So,
thank you. So, Kedecia, we're going to come back so you can catch your breath. All right, no worries. So, Scott, same question. So, what does ETA mean to you, and how did you get to it? And then, what opportunities in the market do you see for people broadly that may or may not know about it?
Yeah, so thanks. So I learned about ETA same time Kiley did. Well, you learned about it before I did because you had family members that figured this out. But I was at Weatherhead and Professor Osborne had a guest in class, a guy named Mal Mixon, who some people may know of. And at the time, he was the CEO of Invacare. They were a New York stock exchange traded company, and he owned another investment company, a really kind of a big deal guy. And he was just coming as a guest. I was like, oh, this will be interesting. And somebody asked him, well, how did you get started? He said, well, about 20 years ago, I heard about this company, Invacare, that was for sale for $8 million. And I had $8,000, and I got an investor. We went and bought the company, and now I'm CEO. We took it public. I was like, holy smokes, I have $8,000, or I could find $8,000. So the idea that I could just take my experience as a business manager, business leader, go find an investor and buy a company really was a breakthrough idea. I always had a dream of business owner, but I just didn't have a startup idea that I thought could make work. So for me, it was a pathway to make my dream of becoming a business owner, come true. And I think, what it means is for the communities that were the other part of that.
The community, so we know how it's worked for you.
Yeah.
And so what opportunities do you see if you were to see someone on the street, walking on the street, and they, you decide to grab a cup of coffee and they asked you the best way to start a business, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, so not only is it a good idea, it's, you're literally 50 to 60 times more likely to be successful as a business owner, becoming a business owner, or buying a company than starting a company. So if you know how to do math, and you're entrepreneurial, you have to consider this pathway. So I think it means a lot more people will be able to get into the game of business ownership the more this idea gets out there, and the strategies of how do entrepreneurial people put these deals together and make it happen. I think we're just going to have more people getting into business ownership, keeping more small businesses in the community, creating more jobs, creating more opportunity. It's just good all the way around.
I completely agree with everything you just said. Phoebe, so similar question, but so you were already a successful entrepreneur with Apparel, right? We'll call it successful. You're smiling, you're up here on the stage. Yeah, we'll call it successful. So how do you see entrepreneurship through acquisition helping you grow your business? How do you see it as a tool for you in the next phase?
Ironically, I always been in this startup world, right? I have a uniform company, and I started up, and I merged with another company that was a private equity, which actually was connected to Mal Mixon. I didn't know he had that many billionaires in Cleveland, but it was expansion through acquisition for me. So, it's employment through acquisition, entrepreneurship, however you want to label that E. I didn't think I sold my company, and I didn't think I would be able to organically build what I had already, and I didn't want to, quite frankly. I kind of already went through, growing in grassroots. I didn't want to go back to doing the 3 or 4 orders. I wanted to continue to do what I was doing with the company that I had. So it was expansion. That was the only way I felt that I could expand and become a major player in the uniform world, is to take up all those little companies, build those companies that didn't have succession plans, and go forward with that.
So can you talk a little bit about the difficulty that you've seen in trying to grow a business? You have 3 or 4 customers and you have no revenue, but you have to build inventory, and the difference between that stress and what it's like to be able to expand through acquisition.
I mean, the stress of a startup, I don't even know how I survived it. I would never go back to it. I don't know why I thought about it. It was my mother's idea, by the way, and I think she'd be very happy that I'm not going that route again. But the stress of getting the deal done versus organically building something step by step, I take the stress over expansion through acquisition any day versus doing somewhat a startup. Even though I have the 20 years of expertise in the fashion business, I would be literally starting over And I didn't want to do that. It was so much harder to do that way.
So Kedecia, we're going to come all the way over to you, and perhaps you can give a little bit of background on what I'm about to say. So you have a very successful corporate career.
Yes.
So we all have slightly different backgrounds and different ways in which I'm into this. So with your success in your corporate career, what is it that is really enticing for you to have a desire to go from something that is so successful, really proud of you, it's amazing, to buying your own business and becoming an entrepreneur through acquisition?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I thought about that a lot. And I think there's like probably 3 points that hit me the most. One is, in my corporate career, I've had the chance to be very entrepreneur. So I've been able to start departments, start new things, read some software, like do all these things that the CP of a corporation, but that truly take almost a startup mentality. And I started with a company when it was a startup, and I got to see that take off. So that spirit is something that just really lives in me. And I'm newer to Cleveland. I've been here about 8 years. I still can't get around, that's why I'm late. But being connected to the community. And so something I realized inside corporate, as it grows and grows and grows, sometimes you get more distant from the community. And one of the things I loved about when I started my career is it was really connected with small businesses. I was working with small businesses every day. I was working with mid-sized businesses. I was working with, and now I'm working with very large businesses. And there's a bit of a distance to that connection. And especially being someone who come into Cleveland and come into this environment, it was Scot case, it made these connections within this community. It's like, wow, there's really this opportunity to be much more tied into what's happening locally here to help revitalize and help economic growth and like have that impact here. So I think there is that aspect of community. And I think the third thing for me is just about purpose. I always want to do things with a lot of purpose. One of the best parts of what I'm able to do today is to grow and nurture people and like to see them go on and do really great things. And I think that's something you can bring at any business, right? And so it's a leap, but ETA I feel is a much safer leap than a startup. And so once I learned about ETA and what that could look like as far as not an off rail, but just getting on a completely different rail of a career trajectory, it really was attractive to me.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about tactics and about presentation, because buying a business is not a simple thing. It's not without stress, and you can mess it up many times over. You can also succeed very quickly if you do it correctly. So Scot, I'm going to go to you with your experience with Promise Partners. Maybe you can say a little bit about Promise Partners. What do you think makes someone a qualified buyer, and how do they show up so that they can stand out?
Yeah, so Promise Partners is a nonprofit ETA accelerator that was started by Professor Richard Osborne, the guy that turned me on to ETA about 33 years ago. It's a peer mentoring group. Traditionally, it was people from Weatherhead. Today, it's people from all over the community who get together and help each other figure out how to put a employee to business owner plan together by acquiring a company. And so that I heard about it when I was getting my MBA, and then I got involved with Promise Partners, and I spent several years getting situated, becoming a qualified buyer. So the main thing that Promise Partners does is helps people get prepared so that when they're ready to actually go buy a company, they are taken seriously in the marketplace. And so I'm noticing this more and more and more, the importance of showing up as a so-called qualified buyer. And mainly, there's just a few things that are critical. The first thing is being fully funded. And so you're buying a business. The first question a seller or the person representing the seller is going to want to know is, do you actually have the money? And can you get the financing to buy the business? And unless you're buying so one way to be fully funded is you have all the money, or you're buying a small company and you're using like an SBA loan and a modest down payment. If you're buying a bigger company, oftentimes that requires getting the backing of an investor. So a lot of people in Promise Partners spend time becoming backable and building relationships with investors. When I launched my first company, I had an investor that supported me, and it took me several years to build that relationship. And then the other two things are, you have the experience to actually get through the process of valuing the company, figuring out how to structure the financing, getting an offer accepted, getting through the whole diligence process, getting the finance closed with the bank, and just navigating what's a very technical, emotional process to go from accepted offer to close. Then the third thing, and probably the most important, is you actually have the skills to run the business that you're going to buy.
So, Kiley, I think it's natural that we jump over to you and talking about the banks and finance and what makes a good buyer. So, CF Bank is known for providing boutique banking services to, well, I would say you in particular are known for providing boutique banking services in Cleveland to small businesses. So, talk to me a little bit about what you really are looking for in someone that is a qualified buyer, from personality, financial backing, whether or not they should have partners or not, that type of thing.
Thank you. First, I have to, everybody raise their hand if they ever heard about ETA before today. This is good. So,
Weatherhead people.
okay, well that doesn't count. What's really unbelievable is right now 1 out of every 5 small businesses are retiring. So what's phenomenal is that if you have the right support system, you can go out and have an opportunity to buy something rather than starting it up, which is incredibly difficult. My biggest recommendation out of all this is that thanks to Scot, he's designated and donated a lot of this time and energy to do the ETA program at CASE. I'm not promoting it because I think you need to promote something. I'm saying you really need to learn and prepare. So to answer your question, Michael challenged him this a week ago, so I figured it out. So I have the acronym PSP. So we need to have passion if we really think we're going to try to do something like this. Because you can say that, Phoebe, and you can say that, Scott. If we're not passionate about being an entrepreneur, and passion takes a lot of little things that can be expanded upon. You hear me next Wednesday, we'll talk about this again. But PS, structure. You really have to have a goal in mind. You have to understand what you're doing, why you want to do it. And then you have to be prepared. The prepared part is the ETA program, but my number one thing that is closest to my heart is you absolutely need to understand income statements, balance sheets, cash flow. You have to understand how a business works. It's not rocket science, guys. You can get crash courses. The biggest way to do it is to go to Scott's classes. But in case you don't have that, you can find other filters. So if you're passionate and you have a structure and you want to be prepared, and I can't do this now, but and ask me more later. It's months and months of learning. But that's really the people that I invest in. Probably 40% of my time is dealing with entrepreneurs that are just not there or may never be there. And we work through this, and then it's a good thing to graduate back to corporate. But the other ones that stick and do it, and the ones that the names get behind have that acronym. And so, anyways, I'm so glad the non-ETA knowers are here, and I'm glad you're learning. So go ahead.
Thank you so much. Kedecia, I'm going to go back to you. So, Kiley was talking about learning quickly, and there's a lot of resources. So, what have you found to be the most important resources, and what does the learning process look like to you as you jump into this new environment that none of us really went to school for as such time?
Great question. And everyone has their process. My process started with, I joined Promise Partners, so that was a great accelerator, right? Because that gives you some really good stepping stones, but you really got to take it on your own and figure it out. So I tended to be book forward, so I bought every book I could on ETA and buying businesses and entrepreneurship. I kind of just started to devour, to like understand the landscape. Like, what is this landscape? What does it look like? What does it mean? Some of those books, they talk about the financial pieces, like what does it mean to put it all together? Because I think at first I had to say, is this something I can see myself in? And do I understand the structure, right? Because I think it is a process. And then talking to people. So having conversations with people who are on the path. And the thing I love about this community is I get to talk to people all over the country about their journey and where they're at, what difficulties are. And then really starting to talk with the mentors and people who have done it, and business owners. I think it's doing the research, is putting your plan together. Because now, once you kind of learn, I had to think about what does my outlook look like in 1 year or 3 years or 5 years? What does getting myself financially prepared look like? What skill set do I have today and what gaps? So personally, or who are the types of people I need to connect with, right? Like what are those blind spots? And so through that research and networking, as I started to evaluate myself, I also had the right kind of people asking me questions and challenging me along the way. That's been really helpful. So mostly you just got to dive in. There's never really, it's how do you dive in? I dove in reading a book and I was all right, I need to meet some people, I need to network, sometimes I'm maybe I'm moving too fast, maybe I'm moving too slow, but I think it's just important to have a game plan, where you're doing that check every month and just keeping on track.
So, Scott, let me go back to you. Just so that people can understand about what we're talking about and the types of businesses, what are the different types of businesses that you could potentially acquire? What type of magnitude of capital should people expect if they want to go into this? What kind of timing should they expect?
So what we're talking about with ETA is typically this conversation is how does somebody go from employee to owner for the first time? And usually people are buying a business anywhere from say 2 million in revenue to say 15 million in revenue is sort of the range, with kind of an average of 8 million in revenue. Companies this size typically sell for 4 to 6 times earnings. So if you have a $5 billion revenue company doing $1 billion in earnings, you might pay $4 million for that company. Kylie will, if you've got a PST, she might lend you, 2 to maybe 3 in a bad, and then oftentimes we'll try and get the sellers to fund some of it, so pay them over time. So maybe you get $2.5 million from Kylie, get $1 million from the seller, and then you got to put 1 to $1.5 million of cash to buy a company. That's kind of a quick back of the envelope to give you sort of a general idea. And so, one of the things, that's why I say build on what Kedecia was just saying. The thing that Kedecia's done that makes her most prepared is she's crushed it as a profession. So because we spend a lot of time talking about ITA, finding the company and buying the company, but if you really think about it, you might spend 6 to 12 to 18 months finding and buying the company, and then you gotta run it for a long time and do it well. So what's most important is how you built the skill sets to effectively run a $2 to $15 million company, and you can do it in a big company. If you're entrepreneurial and you hustle, you can find projects to take on where you get to have autonomy and get the things done and make things happen and increase sales and build teams and develop people. That's the most important thing. Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. If CWRU's going to lend you money, they want to get paid back. And the only way they're going to get paid back is if you actually run the business well. And you can borrow, there's people out there that can help you get the deal done, and there's peer mentoring groups like Promise Partners that can teach you how to find them. But the most important thing, I think, to get prepared is, just building that track record of getting stuff done.
That's great, thank you. Phoebe, I was sitting way over there because I didn't want to get drowned out by your beautiful red outfit. So, as a minority and woman-owned business leader, how do you feel that ETAs could provide more opportunities for underrepresented communities?
I think it's actually the best way to keep our economy strong, the everybody economy thing. We have, it's anywhere from 1,000, I'm heard 10,000 manufacturing companies where Clevelanders know I'm a boomerang kid. I never planned to come back. I never wanted to come back. And then I come back after my dreams hit. Like, there's a lot of money in Cleveland. But we have so many businesses that if we have good leaders, we train those good leaders, we could really keep the talent from leaving and going to South Beach. We don't want anyone losing their talent. So I think startups are like they want more percent in success than the Gen Zers or millennials. They want to be entrepreneurs. So the easiest way to get in is to buy a company that already is cash flowing, that already has the employees. I think I found out about this too late, because I would have done it this way versus the startups. I would have had all those headaches. But I think this is the easiest way, the safest way for investors and the minority and the underrepresented to get into business and keep the businesses in Cuyahoga, Summit, or surrounding Northeast Ohio. I think it's the easiest.
Great. So, I guess I'm going to start with Kiley, but I want Kiley and Scot both to respond to this. Once you go through the entire process that, as you mentioned, can take maybe up to 24 months. You get a deal closed, and you're now the owner of your own company. You walk in and you say, "Hi everyone, I'm your new boss." What are the things that you've seen that people are not prepared for on that day one?
I'll start. So, Michael bought a company that I finance. Yes, and I don't know where Thomas is. Where are Thomas?
Where are you talking?
Okay. I haven't had Michael in my lifetime fade. There you go. Michael had to do many different things. Sometimes there was no one in shipping it. He was figuring out how to do all that. Somehow he felt like the budget was squeaked out a little bit better if he painted all the walls. Somehow he was doing these budget things he never thought he did. And at the end of the day, he sold to, Oversight? No, Blue Point. Phenomenal exit for his first venture. So it is, you do everything. But I think is you had a customer surprise. There was
I had what we call a rep support issue, where there was
yes.
I was told one thing, and after the transaction happened, I learned that it was another thing.
Yeah. So, and he figured it out. He had escrow money and litigation all worked out, right? So I think you'll never know what you come into, but I guess the answer of my PSP is I have not done a deal unless somebody actually had that together. So if you haven't gone through really being with Scot or getting some experience maybe at a higher level internally and then doing the homework, I can help as a nonprofit volunteer, but you're not going to do thank you with me. So, and he didn't reach that first acquisition.
Earlier I said 2 million to 15 million. That's what we focus on at like Weatherhead and the Promise Partners group, and there's thousands of businesses in that range. There's also like 10x the number of companies that are like 500,000 to 1.5 billion. So there's a whole kind of Main Street market that ETA applies to as well. Just wanted to throw that out there. I was thinking about this question, and what came up for me is what's the time when you buy an ETA entrepreneur buys a company, they tend to want to have a significant transition with the seller, and in our cases we always have. In some cases you don't, but usually we do. And I think the biggest concern for me is Kylie's hat that she's not wearing says vote. One thing I've learned about this is like just people telling you who they are. And so as you're going through the process, the seller will tell you who they are and believe you, and underestimate what they're capable of and not capable of, and really get clear on how you're going to work together through that transition period, and don't overestimate what they can and can't do. And so that transition period will go a lot smoother if you have kind of realistic expectations. You talk it out ahead of time, and then once you've gone through the transition, be prepared to sort of push through to the next stage. A lot of times we've been too patient because the letting go of a business is really hard for a lot of sellers. And so it's a tricky process because I want them involved with their customer relationships, their employee relationships, their supplier relationships, and we need to move the business forward. So at some point, you've got to start to say, hey, we're going to take this culture to the next level, take these processes to the next level, start transitioning these relationships, and be prepared for that to be a little bit of a tough process because it's a very personal thing for the seller. So it's a relationship, and we could talk. You have a whole panel, talking about that. But I would just plant that seed, and as you work with peers and advisors, if you decide to go down this road, maybe remember to pay close attention to that.
Yeah, I want to add something to that, which I can add because my daughters aren't here. They would. If they see a recording of this, I'll be in trouble. But so when you think about this, as you go into a business and the person that has owned it and run it has been there for 30 or 40 years, and they've never met you, and then you say, here's what I think is worth, or whatever that dollar amount, feels really, really insulting. Excuse me. And the thing that I'm going to say that my daughters would hate is that the best analogy that I've ever come up with is the scene in The Godfather when Michael Corleone is in Italy and he's trying to explain why he's going to marry the girl that's about to die. And you have to hit it out of the park, just like that conversation, where you have to say every single word correctly and explain, I am going to pay you for the right to marry your daughter for this much money, and you're still going to love her. And it's very difficult. The psychology of it is very intense, and is one of the reasons that I think it's very important to talk to people that have done it so that you can properly prepare. So I want to be able to have at least 30 seconds for some questions. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I want the spirit of technology at Kedecia Ber.
Saying everybody on the stage has helped me. And that's what I think I value the most. Like I said with Kiley, I think people are busy. Everybody's busy. Everybody has taken the turn or break down what I didn't know. So even if it seems scary, it seems impossible, honestly, to get it $2 million from an investor, every single person has taken their time with me, and I can't be more grateful because that doesn't happen a lot of places. And I don't know if that's unique to Cleveland, which we need to, be happy about it. We're about to win the World Series. But I just still feel see that it's based in Northeast Ohio. I think they really need to be studying.
Thank you. So it is kind of a love fest. Because what we talk about oftentimes is there's enough opportunity that we don't have to compete. So if there's enough opportunity for everyone, then why wouldn't we just help each other? And that's the
So, Iowa, could you give them an idea of how much money you can make? I think it all sounds. Why would you do all this?
So I'll give you an example. The second company that I bought, it was in Pennsylvania. We backed a young man that was already working there. We went in. He was working for this. He had this 15-person injection molding company, and he had a parent company that had bought his business for the course of 20 or 50, 20, 30 years, wrapped it up. And they would come in every quarter and they'd sweep his bank account free of cash and he'd start over again. And we convinced him that it was a great idea to do this ECA thing and that we would back him. We negotiated a state deal for him and rolled that into equity. And he ended up, after our transaction was complete, with about 36% of the ownership, common ownership in the business, doubled his salary, quadrupled the EBITDA, and then bought it from all of the rest of us 4 years later, and we made 10 times our investment. And that was for somebody that we backed. And we sold it to him at lower than market value because he mattered to us. And we had made plenty of money. So an extra couple of turns to make it some extra dollars is not worth it at all in any way. Yeah. Yes. Scott and I have invest in other people's businesses now and trying to do this. This is what we do for our careers. And I'd like him to talk about his model a little bit. We started from the first meeting with coffee about an idea and stayed with our partners as partners and advisors all the way through the end of whatever that end might look like. If we hold forever, or if we sold the business to private equity, or if they bought us out as shareholders. It is important to me that we don't accept money for money's sake. We bring smart money to this table. So there are people like the people on this stage that had experience doing this, and that's the people that I want around our entrepreneurs. Questions? Any other questions? I got a question for Kedecia. Susie? Come on.
So we do start with a person who wants to go from employee to owner, who's got a proven track record that can run the business. That's what we value most in our operating partners. They might have a little money or a lot of money. We provide the rest of the capital. That we provide the experience on how do you find the company, how do you value the company, how do you actually get the financing structure, and then we help get the business acquisition closed as it. We're there to help in any way. After that, we're pretty involved. I got, what's going on with the company as partners and advisors for the long haul, and we don't have outside investors. We're just using our own funds, so we can be very patient, like Michael, which is different than the so-called private equity world. They're on a shorter time frame, and there's different dynamics going on between the people running the businesses, the investors, and things like that. But we're there to enable entrepreneurship. We're very patient. The best part is when you have a great outcome, like Michael's story. That's a lot of fun. And
So last quick question. Kedecia, coming from this technology world, do you see changes in technology or things that are happening right now that could help people through the ETA process, or ways that we can use technology to advance the discussion about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big embracer of all things AI. I don't think all things about the AI are great, but I do think as far as the ability to research, to just employ kind of that helper, in a sense, it's something that's really easy for my individuals to embrace and get into. And it's this organizing information. There's all kinds of ways that you can kind of get into that. I just think from a digital standpoint, there's so much happening. We think about automation, efficiency, and transformation. But as an individual doing a search, it's like, how can I make my process that more efficient, right? So I don't have to spend hours with the right email, right? Or spend all this time trying to track contact and those sorts of things. I think there's access to really easy digital tools for individuals to respond to. And then obviously, from a business standpoint, there's a lot happening there, but that's how I think about it, is as an individual searcher and tapping into technology and doing your research and just finding efficiencies wherever you find them.
That's great. So let's move on to these questions. And when I ask a question, we're going to take some words just to shout them at Aaron Marcia today.
I do. So I work out, and I hear so often when I see the interviews, I hear so lonely and I feel going sad till the next week. We could be expressed for the Olympics. What is it if you split things and then your bus goes and it dies?
Choose to fall apart or at the last minute. They can be long and arduous, and oftentimes it seems like everything is fine when it ends at the last minute. So, want to take that, Kiley?
I think you all talked about it all. Buyers and sellers get to talk together. Sellers, as in with their babies for 30 years, and they're selling it. And there's so much emotion, and there's so much details. And so, like I say, all those buyers need to be ready. Well, the sellers aren't prepared at all. So the advisors around them are usually not so great, right? And so even if they're so great, they have people around them trying to make money to kind of keep it going, the lawyers. And they say language that no one understands, like reps and warranties, where all the risks. How do you count inventory? Is it correct or not? And so unless that's, again, the buyer has to prepare. Because if they're prepared, they can talk to the seller, and they can work through that. If you don't have that, it's the only other thing is fraud. I've had an experience of, which was not so great, and that was fraud, right? You can't get around it. And then I had a cookie so easy, but I really do think it was the broker's fault. But we won't tell the broker that, because someone on the station knows what I'm talking about. But I think that is kind of where I feel like it all comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, I was being a little facetious by inventor or whatever, and part of the first episode we did, he so you told me you got an offer accepted. He said your number one job is to build and maintain a relationship with the CISO. And my partner, and one of the reasons I wanted him to be my investor and partner is because he has bought 6 companies, so he's been through this many times. And so I did that. I focused on that. And then what happens is most people selling these small companies, they've never done this before. They've been running the company, they started the company, they inherited the company, they've been doing this 30 years, they've never sold a company. And you build a relationship, that might take yourself some months, you get them to accept an offer. And usually our offers are like 2 pages, all the important links in 2 pages, we hand that to them, we've had a great relationship, they're excited. Then the lawyers take those 2 pages and turns that into 200 pages. And then the first to pay, the lawyer goes through the agreement with them. There's all these new things, and all of a sudden they go from this, I trust, just goodwill and excitement to, well, why are they doing this or why are they doing that? And so nothing else has changed. It just feels different. So I spend a lot of time tell the people that we're buying companies with cheating to them, and it's because you're gonna flip at that. As soon as you see these documents, don't worry about it. Just take a drive. We'll sit down, we'll have coffee, we'll talk through it. I promise you, everything that we committed to, who we are, what we said, we're gonna come through. You got to build that relationship. You have to have that direct conversation. Just don't let the business broker or the lawyer get in the middle of it, because they kill the deal. And I tell the people that we partner with, Daddy, sometimes 3 times, but you come back if you built a good enough relationship with the seller. freezing. Any other questions? We're freezing cold up here, just like trying to just.
Any more questions? I'm certain that Phoebe, do you not have right back?
Great question.
So, start out the changes operating the case and all the questions. Go and see if it's.
It's going to be a real case. I think it should be another way or in the competition and case for easy competitions, which for the kind of companies we should look at in terms of wanting the valuation. We're looking at some PF companies, especially those related to the service in the industry industry. We're looking at business in the energy sector, right, in the energy to their companies, and that's gonna be a lot of money. I'm very sure the kind of value of company we should be looking at, and it also comes down to also if we're trying to orchestrate what value you advertise in terms of valuation of companies.
So if I understand your question, you're looking at you're trying to decide like how big of a company should I be looking at? So normally when we're talking about entrepreneurship through acquisition, where the conversation is how does somebody go from employee to owner for the first time? Okay, so deciding what kind of company do I want to look at, what's my acquisition criteria, to use the fancy term. Well, it's got to be a company that you think you can actually run. And so if I think I heard you correctly, you're saying you're looking at companies that are providing energy to like AI companies, or like talking about like data centers and things like that. I mean, that's an exciting business, but those are like those these $1 billion projects. Like when I graduated from Weatherhead to buy my first company, I'm not looking at a $1 billion company. Like I'm not looking at a $1 billion company today. I don't Michael like you, but. So yeah, there's those are really great business models out there, but they're giant companies that I'm not gonna buy. So I just started a company that I could actually run, and that might be close to something that I can actually acquire based on the amount of money I could convince an investor or a bank to provide. So that's. Am I answering your question? Yes.
Thank you. I completely agree with Scott, and I think the first criteria is, can I run this, right? So are you capable of running a company that has 500 employees? Probably not your first go around, maybe. Probably not. But then, just to kind of give you some guidelines as far as price and size, I'm usually telling people that revenue is going to be between $2 and $25 million. To be very dramatically depending on the profitability of the company, and probably up to $2 million of EBITDA or free cash flow, selling discretionary earnings, whatever you want to call it. Does you feel like that's a decent size to tell people? Then the market doesn't really matter. The market is going to be the type of business. It's just going to be a type of business that you're interested in running. But I would definitely say that you're going to get outside of BMU's SBA loans and a kind of a boutique regional banks like Kiley's. If you go above $2 million, you cut.
So I would say what you like about that business. Say, what do I like about it? Oh, it's recurring revenue. It's high margin. It's a growing industry, right? And I'd say, okay, can I find those attributes in a company that's doing like $2 million in earnings rather than $200 million in earnings, something like that? Like, what do those attributes look like in a company that I could actually run and a company that I can actually afford to buy?
And then make $200 million. That's okay.
Yeah, right. Then go sell it to somebody else before do I that company.
Couldn't come in and be a key man, right? I think that's the word.
Yeah, that would be. You could come in and be a key man in like a private equity transaction. But it's different than what we're talking about with ETA, where you might have a couple percentage points of equity just because you're you're running the business, but it really doesn't fall into this category for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's core consideration. That's like we might call like an equity employee. You don't have a lot of autonomy. You got a small piece of ownership. It's not really what we're trying to that's not what I was looking for. If I wanted that, I'd just go work for a big corporation.
I was thinking so we have this like 80 that want to give away babies, not say, right? And then you come in and you put some equity and then you can own it after a year or two.
Yeah, like what if what a situation and those roles as well. So I'm getting flashlights in my eyes. Is that we have to wrap it up? Yes. My baby girl is yelling at me. So thank you all very, very much. We're here for at least a little while, and we'll be walking around if anyone has any questions. And please feel free to talk to us, okay?
Thank you.